Something you gave up on is about to start working. The Eight of Cups. Indolence. And this is actually a very strange card to get for that message, because this is usually where the energy has drained out of something, right? You tried, you waited, you gave it more time, and eventually you stopped expecting very much from it. Maybe you didn't officially quit. That's what I'm getting. Like you just stopped checking, stopped pushing, stopped talking about it. There's a difference there. It's like you left something sitting there, and I think that you assumed it would stay exactly where you left it. It doesn't. Look at this card. The cups are still here. Nothing has disappeared, but the whole thing feels stagnant. The water isn't moving properly. See, there's potential here, but nothing is circulating. And I think that describes something in your life almost perfectly. The problem wasn't necessarily that the thing couldn't work. The conditions around it weren't working. That distinction is going to matter, because something changes in the conditions, and suddenly you get movement. Now there's somebody watching who's put a project aside, maybe something creative, maybe something involving money. It's like you try to get traction with it, and nothing happened quickly enough to justify the amount of energy you were putting into it. So you redirected your attention. And recently, something connected to that old project has started showing signs of life. Maybe somebody asks about it. Something gets discovered. A person finds something you made months ago. Maybe an old contact resurfaces. Whatever it is, there's this strange little signal. You almost ignore it. Don't. I think that little signal becomes something larger. For somebody else, this is a situation involving your home. Something that's been sitting unfinished. You know exactly what it is. You walk past it all the time. At this point, you barely see it anymore. And that's when you know something has truly become part of the house. There's a temporary solution that has somehow survived long enough to become permanent. Yeah. And suddenly something becomes available. The right person, the money, the missing part. Maybe somebody finally has time. The thing moves. And there's more relief in getting it handled than you expected. It's like it's been quietly irritating you for a long time. But I think the strongest story here is personal. You've been assuming that your lack of enthusiasm for something meant you no longer wanted it. I'm not sure that's true. I think you became discouraged. Those can feel identical from the inside, right? You stop thinking about something because thinking about it reminds you that it isn't happening. Eventually you say, I guess I don't care anymore. Maybe. Or maybe caring became uncomfortable. See, there's a difference between losing desire and protecting yourself from disappointment. Now I want another card. There it is. Ace of Wands. That is an extraordinary change in energy. This is stagnation, and this is ignition. Something starts fast. And now I understand the reading. You haven't lost the thing. You've been waiting for the spark. And the spark is coming from outside the situation. That's important. Because I don't think you solve this by trying harder. Something new enters, right? A person and an idea and an opportunity. Maybe information that you didn't have before. And then it's like suddenly you see a way to do something that you couldn't see 6 months ago. Now the Ace of Wands is very different from forcing yourself to become motivated. It's the moment you actually want to move. You know that feeling? You can spend 3 weeks telling yourself you should do something, but nothing. Then at 11:30 at night, some idea gets into your head and suddenly you're moving furniture. Where did that come from? It's that, right? Something catches. And once it catches, the situation moves surprisingly quick. Now there is a person involved in this. I don't think they realize how much they affect you. They say something. Maybe they ask a question, and it sends your mind somewhere completely different. You continue thinking about it after the conversation ends. There's a possibility that you hadn't considered. And by the next morning, you've already started forming a plan. That conversation matters. And I'm getting somebody with a very energetic way of speaking. Like they interrupt themselves, you know? They start one story and somehow end up telling another. There may be an initial B, first or last initial B. I'm also seeing something orange, a jacket perhaps, or an object sitting on a desk. There is a late night message connected to this, like after 10. And you see it and you think, okay, that's interesting. But then you put the phone down. But then you pick it up again. That feels like the beginning. Okay. And there's something else here I really like. You may be about to discover that people were paying attention while you thought nobody was paying attention. That feels especially strong around work or something creative. Like you assumed something failed because the immediate response wasn't what you hoped, but somebody remembered it. Probably more than one person, and then later, when circumstances change, they come back. And that can happen in the strangest ways. You make something, nothing happens. But then months later, the right person encounters it, and suddenly the thing has a second life. Now the Ace of Wands doesn't care that the timing offended your original schedule. It just wants the opening. And you know what this reminds me of? There are landscapes, that can look completely dead for years. Some deserts, they receive so very little rain that enormous stretches of ground appear practically empty. Then the conditions change. The rain arrives, and suddenly flowers appear, sometimes like spectacularly. Seeds had been sitting in the soil the entire time, dormant, waiting. That's strange enough, right? But there are plants whose seeds can remain viable through extraordinary long periods of unfavorable conditions. Nothing visible is happening. If you walked across the ground, you'd assume there was nothing there. Then water arrives, and the landscape tells you that your eyes were wrong. Dormant is not the same thing as dead. That feels important enough that I want to leave it there. No big speech about flowers. Just remember it. Because there's something in your life that you've classified as dead that may actually have been dormant. The conditions change, and it responds. Now, there's another story here concerning your body. Like somebody's been feeling flat, like energy inconsistent. You've been trying to return to some routine that you used to have, maybe exercise, maybe like simply getting outside more, right? And I think something shifts. You have one unusually good day. You feel strong. You sleep well. You wake up and you actually want to do something. Now, don't immediately turn that into a 12-point optimization program. Use the energy. That's enough. One good day can become two. But you don't need to extract a philosophy from it. That's something I actually like about the Ace of Wands. It's not complicated. Life becomes complicated later. The beginning is usually simple. You want to, so you do. Somebody watching this has been waiting to feel completely certain before beginning something. You're not going to. Certainty isn't the spark. Interest is. Curiosity is. Sometimes irritation is. Sometimes you begin, right, because you finally become annoyed enough with the current situation to change it. That counts too. There's an old story about fire that appears in different forms across cultures. Fire is rarely treated as merely a useful object. It gets stolen from gods, guarded, carried, passed from one world into another. In the Greek story, Prometheus steals fire and gives it to humanity. There's something almost suspicious about fire in the old stories, right? As though people looked at it and thought, we cannot possibly have invented this. Look at it. It eats. It moves. It transforms everything it touches. It can keep you alive or erase the house around you. Of course, somebody stole this from a god. I think that's why the Ace of Wands works so well here. A spark is tiny, almost nothing. But once it catches, you have a completely different set of conditions. And I think you're approaching that moment. The little thing happens, the message, the conversation, the idea, the unexpected response, and then suddenly, you're doing something you had almost stopped believing you would do. Watch what makes you want to move again. Now, I think there is money attached to this for someone, but I don't think the money arrives first. First comes movement, yeah. Then money begins following the movement. Maybe a project starts producing. Something you own becomes useful. An idea becomes sellable. A skill you haven't used in a while suddenly has a market. The first amount may be small. Don't judge the entire path by the first result. The important thing is that there's now a result where previously there was only effort. There's something very specific about somebody telling another person about you that feels stronger than just advertising yourself, right? It's a recommendation. Your name comes up naturally. Someone says, oh, you should talk to them. That creates an opening. If somebody contacts you unexpectedly about something you thought was finished, answer. You don't have to say yes to everything. Just don't dismiss the conversation because it arrived late. Late is not necessarily too late. Now there's a relationship layer here too. But this doesn't feel like somebody returning from the past. We've been there. This feels like energy returning inside an existing relationship. You and somebody have fallen into routine. Nothing terrible. Maybe that's part of the problem. Everything became logistical. Who's picking this up? What time are we leaving? Did you pay that? What do we need from the store, Romance slowly becomes project management. Then something interrupts the routine. You go somewhere. You do something different. Maybe you have a conversation that isn't about responsibilities. And for a moment you remember, oh, I actually like this person. That matters. Something warms back up. Not because you repair some enormous crisis, because you introduce life into a place that has become repetitive. You see, the Ace of Wands wants novelty, movement, something neither of you has done before. You don't need a relationship summit. You may need Tuesday to stop looking exactly like every other Tuesday. Change the conditions. There's a strange little fact about forests after fires. Now, some species are adapted to conditions created by fire. Certain pine cones can remain sealed until heat helps them open and release their seeds. Fire destroys, right? But in some ecosystems, fire is also part of the process that creates space for regeneration. That doesn't make every fire good, obviously. But nature is rarely as tidy as our categories. Destruction is here. Growth is here. Sometimes they occupy the same event. And maybe that's another part of this. Something had to become disappointing enough that you stopped forcing it. That created space. You backed away. You stopped controlling every variable. Then maybe a different route became visible. Maybe the failure wasn't the end of the story. Maybe it was the end of one method. That's very different. And this is where your agency matters. When the spark appears, you still have to do something with it. The ace gives you a potential. It doesn't build the fire for you. If somebody reaches out, you respond. If the idea arrives, write it down. If you suddenly see how to fix something, take the first practical step. Don't immediately demand proof that the entire future will work. You won't get that. Take the evidence you actually have. Something that was stagnant is moving. That's enough information for the next move. And I think the next move comes quickly. There's like a compressed feeling around this. I think within several days, you find yourself unexpectedly busy with something you had almost forgotten. And the weirdest part is going to be like how natural it feels. as though the dormant period never happened. You know how you can go years without speaking to somebody, and then you talk for 20 minutes and suddenly the rhythm is back? Projects can do that too. Parts of ourselves can do that. You may recognize yourself again. And that may actually be the deepest part of this reading. Something working again is good. Money moving is good. A project reviving is good. But I think the thing you really get back is your own enthusiasm. You've missed it. Maybe more than you've realized. You've been doing what needed to be done. Being responsible. Keeping things moving. But there's a difference between functioning and being lit up by something. This is the second one. So watch for the small ignition. It may not announce itself as an opportunity. It may just be a strange conversation, an unexpected response. Somebody asking whether you still do something, a thought that keeps you awake a little later than you intended. And if you suddenly feel that familiar urge to begin, don't interrogate it to death. Follow it far enough to see where it goes. 8 of Cups, indolence, something lost circulation. It stopped responding. Maybe you stopped believing in it. Ace of Wands, then something catches. And what you thought was finished starts producing movement again. This time, don't try to create the old version. Let it become whatever it's trying to become now. Before you go tonight, there may be something you haven't touched in a while. An idea, a plan, something you made. You don't need to dig it out tonight. Just notice if it crosses your mind after this reading. Because sometimes the first indication that something is returning is simply that you begin thinking about it again. And then tomorrow, something answers. If this reading found you tonight, subscribe to Dove Serpent Nightly and come back tomorrow. We'll see what the cards find then. And until then, keep your mind somewhere between wonder and understanding.